Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. The most observant of you will very quickly realize that I am neither Tom Haas nor James Williams, both of whom are, by long-standing arrangement, unavailable this morning, and so the third string has been called. Good morning, I'm Matt McLogan, Vice President of University Relations, and it is my real privilege this morning to welcome you and to introduce the introducer of our special guest. That gives me an opportunity to parry with Peter Secchia, and I can hardly wait. First, a word from the sponsor. Because so many of you are Grand Valley alums, I thought you might want to know that yesterday in Lansing, the governor released his budget recommendation for the coming year. Still to meet us subjected to the tender mercies of the State House and the State Senate. Mike, you remember those days. But the governor has tied higher education funding for the first time in my career to performance measures by the universities. And he laid out the map yesterday of what those performance measures are and how the new money that he is proposing to add to the higher ed budget would therefore be allocated. Which institution ended up at the top of that list? Grand Valley. So all of your degrees are worth more this morning. And I'm hoping that our appropriations will be worth more later as well. Our second sponsor this morning is Ambassador Secchia and his family. You may think that Peter's particular brand of color blindness allows him to see only green and white, and that is not true. Ambassador Secchia and Joan and their family took a real position in helping to get this building done. And if you gaze across the street at Secchia Hall, student housing in downtown Grand Rapids that is infinitely better looking than it ever would have been had Peter not assisted us in making it look that way. So Peter, thank you for sponsoring this morning's event, and how appropriate it is that you're going to be introducing the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, because several years ago at a Grand Valley event with similar folks in the room, our guest that day was Robert Gates, who had just finished his first tour of duty as CIA director. And he paid the highest compliment to Peter for the work that he and his staff had done in Italy to frustrate those who wanted to do harm to America. So there's no one better to introduce the chairman of the Intelligence Committee than our own Ambassador, Peter Secchia. All right.
We do an event every year in Lansing for Special Olympics. And George Perlis is one of the co-chairs and Frank Kelligan. We all have former titles, and they're a little old now. Under 20 years I've been called ambassador, so I changed it, cross it out, and put Pete. But I asked George, you wanted to change the name of the golf tournament to the three formers. He didn't like that. So I'm here to introduce a friend who was a former acquaintance in your state senate. I knew Mike Rogers. First time I met him, John Engler introduced me as his friend, and he told me about Mike, who was an FBI agent who just left the FBI a few years prior. And we were interested in seeing what a guy like this would bring to the public sector. So Mike decided that he would go for it, and he served us honorably in many positions, but I remember him best as one of the Senate leaders of the state Senate when John Engler made many great changes to the way we did business and the way we approached private sector, and in fact came up with the money to build this campus on a 33 deal. It was the first private-public partnership that the state ever did. Prior to that, when Wayne State or Michigan and Michigan State or Grand Valley wanted a building, they would come to the state and they'd have to wait in a queue until the state had the $80 million to build them a science building or the $40 million to build them an engineering building, whatever. They would have to wait until that money was appropriate. We gave John Engler a plan that said, okay, if we in the private sector come up with 1/3 of the money and the school agrees to raise the other third or bond it, will the state give us a third? And my argument to the governor was, if you do that, then the other schools will have to get in the queue, but worse than that, they'll have to find private sector individuals who will give that 33% of the needed capital funds. This was the first project approved by the governor, this downtown campus. And he came over and viewed the sketches with Don Lubbers and I many, many years ago, and then 12 of us put together the land here. It's a long story, but Mike Rogers was a young state senator through those years, and he was helping us. Mike has then recently been appointed chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. And it's a very interesting job, and he's got interesting comments, so you don't need to have a long, flowery introduction. I can tell you, he served with honor in the FBI, served with distinction in the state senate. Now he's in the Congress, and already when you see him, you see how young he is. And if you ever see his wife, you'd know that he's a lot younger than he thinks he is. You will know that Mike is someone who will make you proud. And just yesterday I was talking to Ron Weiser in Washington, who said Mike has been a big help to most of the people in our party, but a bigger help to all of the people in this room, because he's, for the first time, he's the guy that pushed for a budget in the Intelligence Committee. They never had one before. Now he's got two budgets, of course, sort of like an Italian businessman. But he's got the budget that tells everybody how the money's going to be spent, where it's going to be spent. He has since traveled to Afghanistan, to Pakistan, to Iraq, to Yemen. He's been everywhere representing you. So he's going to talk about that this morning. So I proudly introduce an old friend, a state senator, a loyal Michiganian, Michael Rogers. I'm very
Thanks, Frank. Appreciate that, Ron. Great. Well, thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. That's the nicest Peter has been to me since I've met him. I got to tell you, thank you very much, Peter. I appreciate that. Matter of fact, to tell you how clueless I was when I first met him, and for those of you who know, for many years he decided socks were apparently a bad thing. So I first met him, and I felt sorry for the guy. I saw this guy who comes in, his jacket's a little rumpled, he had no socks on. I offered him $5. My God, sir, can I help you out a little bit? Little did I know, as we drove by Secchia Hall over here. So apparently I wasn't the brightest of FBI agents as we go through. But Peter, thank you very much. I want to echo those comments about his work as ambassador in Italy. And many would be shocked if I said Peter was too humble to tell you, for those of you who know Peter. But he was very instrumental in many projects there, including, by the way, getting the Italians to join the coalition in the first Gulf War, which was incredibly important to bring the other European nations around, which was no small feat. Well, we still believe that he said that there would be some great Italian wine and cheese, and you needed to send your soldiers to guard it in a place called Iraq. We think that's exactly how he did it. But however you did it, sir, congratulations. But he did phenomenal work for his country then, and Ambassador, I want to thank you for that. I thought I'd talk just a minute, and I want to have an opportunity to talk, take some questions if we can. First of all, what is the Intelligence Committee? Our job, it's very unique. We deal with the most sensitive information that our country has. We have access to all of it, especially as the chairman. It is the one check and balance to our intelligence services and the executive branch. I look at it more of a partnership. Sometimes we have to be critical in the things that we do, but at the end of the day, I want our intelligence community to be successful. There are 16 agencies and then one cover agency, the DNI. Our job is to, as chairman, is to do a budget. We hadn't done that. To apply a budget to the 16 agencies and then promote the policy that makes them effective, give them the tools that they need. So you can imagine it's the FBI, the CIA, the NGA, the NRO that does the satellite architecture over the country. It is a very big and large operation. The unclassified number is $80 billion a year. So we spend and invest significantly in our intelligence services. And this committee is a little bit different in the odd way that even operations, normally the legislative branch isn't engaged in the operations, it's the policy, it's the budgeting, it's those discussions. But because of the sensitive nature, there are only 20 of us on this committee, we're engaged in operational checkoffs, if you will. So it is a very unique committee to be on, and one that I'm humbled to have this responsibility, and it is in fact big responsibility. When those big vault doors close, there's just 20 of us in there having this debate without microphones or cameras in the room. So as a part of that, you can imagine we work with the NSC, the National Security Council, and I talk frequently to all of the heads of our intelligence agencies, mostly daily in some conversation or another. And the world is still a very dangerous place. When you think about where we are today, you have China, who has certainly engaged in some nefarious activities on cyber, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But they've also taken a new tack. They're just getting ready to launch their first carrier, which will be their first carrier for them. They've got a pretty strong fleet of submarines, some of which we believe are nuclear capable. And they just for the first time decided that the Americans and other international players shouldn't freely sail in the South China Sea. Now, this is a place that has been a route for commerce, certainly since we've been a country, and long before that. So this is an interesting position for the Chinese to take in the world, which means we're going to have some challenges moving forward, which is why you see this shift, I think, to a Pacific Rim policy agenda that we didn't really have before. We're going to have to change a little bit, given China's thumping their chest a little bit. North Korea pursuing nuclear weapons is clearly something that we worry about. Not only are they pursuing them, but their proliferation of nuclear weapons, where they're selling them, who they're giving their technology to, is very, very, very concerning. We have the fact that Iran is actively pursuing a nuclear weapons program. They say it, we believe it. Intelligence certainly, I believe, confirms that. And they are becoming more and more emboldened. Think about what just happened within just the last several years. The State Department issued a report that said maybe 600 U.S. soldiers have been killed by proxies of Iran in Iraq. They've introduced very sophisticated weapon systems to target our soldiers in Iraq. They're doing the same in Afghanistan. They very brazenly decided they were going to conduct an act of political assassination in the United States. In the United States and in our nation's capital. And they also, through that discussion, decided that if there were U.S. civilian casualties, they were willing to accept that as part of the risk. They were going to blow up a restaurant full of people, if you can imagine that, to target the U.S. or the Saudi ambassador to the United States. That takes a very interesting calculation to make that decision, and I can talk about why that was a very legitimate operation. That, but for one stroke of luck, we would have been we would have been talking about the aftermath of this particular event. So you can see that in our Al-Qaeda friends, let me back up, Pakistan along that Afghan border is still giving us fits. The tribal areas of Pakistan, which are a semi-autonomous region for Pakistan by their constitution, has provided safe haven for not only Al-Qaeda members, but senior Taliban members. Those are the folks that are fighting our soldiers and Marines in Afghanistan. That's been a big concern for us, and Pakistan is a pretty difficult place to deal with. By the way, they're going to go from number 5 on the nuclear weapons power list to number 4 here pretty quickly. If that doesn't give you a bit of pause, it should. I've been in the tribal areas of Pakistan, and it's really like going back in time about 300 years, except they have trucks. It is just a very fascinating place to be. And their rational discussion and decision making is very different from us and other nuclear powers. That's why it's a concern to folks like me. So you have that all going on all at the same time. Yemen is a hotbed. Al-Qaeda, for the first time, is holding territory. They actually own territory in Yemen, the south of Yemen. They've been beating back the Yemeni provisional forces there, which is causing us some concern. And that was one of their first steps in their effort to form a caliphate, was to hold some ground, and they think apparently they've picked Yemen as the starting place for that. You have Somalia that is just about ungovernable. The government of Somalia owns about 8 square blocks in Mogadishu, and beyond that it is really ungoverned territory, which is always a breeding ground for trouble for all of the nations. And of course, you've seen the rise in piracy there as a result of that. But they also have groups that have affiliated with Al-Qaeda and continue to work with our terrorism, with their efforts in terrorism. Something called Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, which is that northern part of Africa, is the largest funder of Al-Qaeda. They pass money to the other affiliates around the world, and they raise their money through kidnapping. So the world is still a very dangerous place. And we can, as you can imagine, we still have a lot to do. So I worry about those things. I just had a worldwide threat hearing as the chairman of Intelligence. We do this once a year to try to highlight at least some of the big threats that we worry about and why we spend the resources that we do and why we do some of the things that we do in order to kind of know what the bad guys are up to and know how we keep our country safe. And the one thing that we've got talked about this year, that hasn't been talked about a lot, I was appreciative of sitting next to the dean of the engineering and computer section here at the university for the simple reason that cybersecurity, as we move forward, is going to be our biggest challenge. I have never seen in my time, certainly in my study of history, a nation state that invests its intelligence and military services in the organized theft of our intellectual property, like the Chinese have done and are doing to us. And it is exponentially worse this year than it was last year, and will be exponentially worse next year because of their growing capability. They are actively pursuing intellectual property on all U.S. networks, European networks, our Asian allies' networks. They are downloading and exfiltrating intellectual property, taking it back to China, reprogramming that technology, and trying to compete directly with U.S. and international companies. Some estimates from the intelligence community it may be as high as $1 trillion worth of intellectual property per year. Now, what does that mean to us? For those of us who are on the upside or downside of our careers, or the rise to mediocrity, I think as Pete said earlier. Oh, that's okay, you can laugh, it's fine. But the younger generation here means that in 5 and 7 and 8 years, the technology that would have employed you, that you would have been a part of to continue to make America the greatest economy on the face of the earth, is now at risk. It means that we will have an artificial partner or competitor who invested not one dime in research and development, but has all the benefit of that product innovation that they can apply in the marketplace. And they are exceptionally good. I mean, the Russians are better. The Chinese are exceptionally good, and the volume of which they attack is incredible. I'll give you just interesting statistic. Just in one day, the CIA computer network will be attacked, or at least attempted to be attacked, over 100,000 times. One day. That's just one relatively small organization in the government side. Imagine if they want your intellectual property. Name an IT person in the world in the private sector, if you're a small company, a big company, medium-sized company, that can withstand a tenth of that every single day. Something's going to get through. That's the problem. They have something called APT. It's a long threat. So what they'll do is they'll get onto your networks. They're not interested in taking something and running. They're interested in lurking on your network for as long as they can to sniff around, find out what's valuable, and then exfiltrate it as fast as they can. So they may be on your networks for years, watching something develop over time. And when it gets to the place where they think that they can get some value from stealing it, they're doing it. And I'd like to tell you this is a movie. I'd like to tell you this is the movie 2050. This is happening today. It is happening every day. And it is of utmost concern for me. So when somebody asked me the other day, well, what keeps you awake as chairman of the Intelligence Committee? I have to tell you this is a big part of it. And that's just one part that we worry about on cybersecurity. You have the criminal element. We've all heard about that. Identity theft, other folks getting in, stealing your stuff and getting the heck out. That's a problem. We also have this growing capability from not only nation states, China, Russia, Iran, others, but from non-nation states for what's called a cyber disruption, or we call it cyber attack. The intelligence community believes that within, well, the time frame we got was 12 to 24 months, and that was about 4 months ago, we will have a catastrophic cyber attack in the United States. What does that mean? That means part of our financial sector gets shut down, you show up and put your card in the machine, nothing happens, and your account says 0, 0, 0, 0. That part of our electric grid gets turned off. That a big chunk of our manufacturing sector gets disrupted in its just-in-time manufacturing to the point where it causes major financial difficulties. And the problem is, it's coming. And the question is, are we ready for it? And I can tell you, we are not. So what we're trying to do in Congress is do something that would allow give us at least the fighting chance to put our private networks in a position to be able to stop something like that and or know what malicious code is coming. I won't bore you with all the details. I have a bill that I passed 17-1. It was a bipartisan bill out of the Intelligence Committee that allows the government to share, I call it the secret sauce, with the private sector. Right now we're fairly good about stopping things on .gov and .mil because we have the NSA, which is an incredible organization, and everybody there has an 80-pound head, we said. Pretty smart people, thank God. Thank God they're there, is what I'm telling you. They do their work every single day. They're doing a great job, but the problem is they know about some things that are pretty bad that they cannot share because we've collected it in a classified manner with the private sector. So they can even see something bad coming, go right by them. By law, they're prohibited from sharing that with the private sector. Now, it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, imagine if or some tank division from Canada was driving down to come invade northern Michigan. You'd think that they'd be able to share that with us, wouldn't you? Yeah, they would. Well, think about this just in zeros and ones flying at you that you know is going to cause some serious harm, and you're not being unable to communicate that information in a way that protects all our networks. So what this does is it allows sharing of information. We're going to have a forum where private sector companies can get clearances so that the government can share this information and they can apply that source code. Remember, it's just if you know what you're looking for, you can find it. When these packets of information fly by at hundreds of millions of times a second, if you know what you're looking for, you can find it. And so what we're trying to do is allow the government to share with the private sector. We think this gives us at least a fighting chance on some of the malicious code we know is out there and not being used today, so the private sector wouldn't understand that it might be a threat. So all of that's happening all at the same time. You can tell that we have huge challenges that face the country. We have human spies that are out trying to collect that information and understand what our threats are. We have active intelligence operations where we engage the enemy, the Al-Qaeda, especially where they live or they finance or where they recruit. And we have this strategic threat now of both cyber and a growing nuclear proliferation issue around the world that keeps us all up at night. Matter of fact, the Russians, who went silent for a long time, just launched their new, they call them boomer ships. These are submarines that are all equipped with nuclear missiles. So they have revamped their nuclear fleet and just launched their first boomer in I can't tell you how many years, probably about 30 years. That's very sophisticated, high-end technology that means that we're going to have to be back into the business of trying to track those submarines. Remember, in the Cold War, that was a big thing. You saw a lot of movies on the Cold War, the sub battles. Well, guess what? Unfortunately, we're right back in that business. So just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, the Russians are here. So I just wanted to, I figure I can't sleep, that none of you should be able to sleep either. And thought I'd share where the posture of the world is and why it is so important that we continue to engage, I argue, and invest in our intelligence capabilities. I have never seen in my time the importance of intelligence in getting it right than I have today, mainly because the threat is so asymmetric now. There are ways to come at us that were just unthinkable just a decade ago. And so that means we just have to be better. We have to be better at trying to figure out what their intentions are, what their leadership intentions are. We have to be better at building our defenses in a way that meets this new challenge in this new era that we're gonna live in here moving forward. And this rising Chinese, what they believe, they want to be very influential in the world, and they're going to do that by investing in their military. By the way, the country that's invested more than any other nation in such a short period of time is China. They're trying to develop a very sophisticated military capability. They have said publicly they want to compete with the U.S. Navy on the open seas. So we're going to have some challenges, and we've got to be ready for it. So I just thought I'd lay out the case and save some time for some questions, and if you want to go home and pull the sheets up over your head, I'd say I'd go with you, but as a politician, I think I can get in trouble for that. I meant figuratively, or whatever that is. Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks. Yes, sir.
My question is that the intelligence community has worked closely with the military.
Yes.
The problem that I've always had in the military is my contacts tell me is that we are now losing Afghanistan because of the rules of engagement. What you've talked about is that we've known where the threats are coming. It hasn't been communicated to the American public or the leadership is that the rules of engagement are in Afghanistan is that our troops are no longer allowed to go out, locate, close with, and destroy the enemy. They're on the same routes. They're being told what time they can only work in the day because they might wake babies, and the State Department thinks that would not be good. They've identified that we are leaving in 2013. Therefore, Al-Qaeda is going to the family members and say, we know your dad, husband works with the Americans. Either he works with us or you're going to die. And the American public is not being told any of this. And I now see disenchantment in the Marine Corps, which I'm associated with. And it's part of the intelligence community. What can you do with Congress or those kinds of hearings? Because it's another Vietnam, and it's going to be a bloodbath starting in 2015 or 16 from everything that I'm told.
Yeah. Well, look at the time. I know. Just kidding. I know.
That's your first question.
Yeah, exactly. Boy, you guys, this is what goes around comes around, huh? I'm as frustrated as I have ever been on a policy as I have seen this. And one of my gripes with the president, let me back up for a minute. I have been very bipartisan. I think I was one of 8 Republicans that stood with the president on Libya because I was worried about the weapon systems there. I supported his effort on the surge. So I look at national security as a bipartisan issue. Right? So that didn't make me all that warm and fuzzy a few years ago with my conference. But I think it's important. This is too important. And I have to tell you, on this policy, it's not only wrong, it's dangerous what they have done, I think. And I have tried to tell them this in as many ways as I can possibly tell them this. Think about the scenario. Sometimes we think only through American eyes about what signals get sent. You know, we're tired of the war, we want the war over, let's go on. I was a former Army officer as well. Thank you for your service, by the way. The signals that we send to our enemy are as important sometimes as the boots that are on the ground. And what we have told them was, and we saw some real progress, by the way, right after the surge was announced, the psychology of that was very important. The Taliban at that time thought we're in trouble. And we saw it. We saw it in intelligence reporting. We saw it in detainee interviews that they were thinking, hey, this thing is not going well, and I don't want to take on the United States Marines or the 101st Airborne Division. I'm not into that. Right? Because they lose. When they engage those units, they lose. End of story. So what happened was, as the surge was taking hold, the administration decided in the middle of it to announce an artificial drawdown dateline. Well, that gave the enemy a date to rally around. Right? And I'll give you a disturbing number here, that when we started this, there were about 30,000 Taliban regulars throughout the country, and they're not a regular fighting unit, so they don't show up like we would show up as a fighting unit. They're guerrilla-type fighters, so they dispatch in small numbers, they fight, they run, they fight, they run. Has been their tactics for years. That number started to diminish in the last couple of years because of the surge. We just got a report recently that that number is back to 30,000 recruits. That means for everyone we're taking out, they're finding new recruits. And why are they finding new recruits? Because they think we're leaving. Well, no, let me correct that. They know we're leaving, and they keep telling their recruits, just wait them out. Pretty dangerous. Now, you remember, they're getting their help from the Iranians in this equation. So they don't think they're by themselves. So all of this work, all of this effort, all of this blood, all of this treasure to try to make sure we remove a safe haven for Al-Qaeda, which we know Taliban is closely associated with, is now at risk of returning. What really hurt us was this message recently that not only was it going to be, the pullout date was 2014 for sure and for certain, no matter what the circumstances are on the ground, now we've decided it's going to be 2013. Well, that shocked everybody, including the military, including members of Congress who work through these policies every day with the military, with our intelligence services, with the NSC. That was a surprise announcement. And it causes real problems for those Marines and those soldiers who are on the ground because it empowers their enemy to believe that they're winning. We know that through detainee interviews. We catch a few and they say, we're told fight now and wait it out and we're winning. In that calculus, we don't any longer get to look at the world just through Afghanistan, just through Iraq. Think of all the things that are going on now, right? So if you're the Iranians, right, and they have been actively engaged and they have a strategic shift into Iraq, which we know they have done. They have killed as many as 600 U.S. soldiers, right? Nothing happened there, except we left. Now they're active engaged in Afghanistan, and we not only announced we're leaving in 2014, the surge is coming down next year, by the way, right in the middle of the fighting season. And there's different there. They don't fight in the wintertime there. They fight between May and October. And our drawdown ends in October, which means all that command energy is designed to take soldiers out, not engage in the fight. So that's a problem. The Iranians think this is win number 2. So they were so brazen, they decided to commit an act of political assassination in our country, and what happened since then? Nothing. So the messages we send to our enemies are as important as the soldiers on the ground, and we have done a horrible thing by telling the Iranians, you're winning the region, we're losing, we're packing up, we're coming home, we're too tired to deal with it. That is a huge problem for this country as we move forward. Tell you what else it's done. Now you got me on my soapbox. Got my blood pressure up.
I haven't slept for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Who has come to talk to you?
Yeah, good. Well, is now we have this interesting relationship with Israel. I think a unilateral attack from Israel to Iran is not good for the United States. Doing it by themselves. I just don't think it is. Why? Because I do believe a nuclear Iran is incredibly dangerous. It means a nuclear arms race in the greater Middle East. Saudi Arabia has said they'll get nuclear weapons. Egypt said, well, we won't be without nuclear weapons. Turkey said, well, we won't be the only ones without nuclear weapons. You can see how this gets ugly in a real hurry. And they're not rational actors. You don't get accords between the Russians and the United States and the French, and we all agree to abide by the rules, and we have some sense of rational actors that understand that mutually assured destruction does mean destruction at the end of the day. That equation that has kept us safe from nuclear engagement is gone when you have irrational actors trying to do the negotiations at the table, right? That part gets gone. That's why this is so terrifying, I think. So now the messages we've sent to Israel is we're not sure we're your friends anymore or not. They have a problem. This is a country that said if we get nuclear weapons, we're going to use them, and we're going to use them on you. In the FBI, we would call that a clue. So the Israelis, who believe that they have this existential threat, something that, and yet all of these countries don't want them to exist anyway, have to make their own decision now. And why? Because the messages, again, we send to our enemies. Remember when the president came out and gave his 67 border speech, I don't know if anyone followed this on Israel, it really set things off. That's when the Palestinians went to NATO or the UN and said that they were going to get statehood and all of that. Because what happened is the president became more Palestinian than Abbas, who was Palestinian. So that rattled our relationship. And we have a very close working relationship with their military and their intelligence services. And after that, they said, all right, we're going to have to do this by ourselves, apparently. We just don't know where the United States will be. Why is that bad? Again, if there's an attack, our moderate Middle East allies, and we have moderate Middle East allies, can't be with them. Therefore, can't be with us. That's a problem. So, and I'll tell you this, why I'm so frustrated. I spent a long time with a very senior Middle Eastern, Arab Middle East country intelligence service individual. We spent a long time working on some issues. And at the end of it, I said, sir, if I could make you king for a day, what would you tell the United States? And he said, well, what I would tell the United States is please tell us what your Middle East policy is. This was about 3 months ago. And that confusion, when we are supposed to be the leaders in this region to keep the lid on things. It's what we do. We may not like it, but that's who we are. And at the end of the day, the world's a better place for it. That equation is now missing, and it's very, very concerning. By the way, Israel also has a problem now with Egypt on their southern borders that they never had in, 30-some years. So now they've got to worry about Iran going nuclear, and Egypt is talking about doing away with a peace accord, which they say they will not respect. And the Sinai, if you followed any of this, the Sinai is now a mess. It is a arms, guns bazaar. It's organized crime on steroids, which didn't happen just even 2 years ago. So you can see all this turmoil just starting to go over there that's really concerning. And I guess my other problem is I wish the president would get on TV and start talking about international policy. If you've got troops overseas, you may not like it, but you got to talk about it. Americans need to be with you. And you don't do it by not talking about it. Very frustrating. Anyway, you shouldn't ask that question. Thanks. Yes, sir.
How bad is our withdrawal from the space program going to hurt the intelligence?
I'm very, very worried about it. The first thing we lose is the intellectual capability to continue to advance our space program. China thinks they're going to beat us in 2 areas on technology. First is space, second is cyber. That is their future for world influence. So we aren't ready for cyber, and we've unilaterally decided we weren't going to be engaged in space transportation. I think it's a huge mistake. There are 4,000 engineers got pink slip. 4,000 in Florida alone. Florida alone, 4,000. Now what happens to where do they go? Some of them are going to India because these Indian companies who are trying to get into the space game are hiring them as fast as they can find them. These are U.S. trained, U.S. experienced NASA engineers. They're leaving as fast as, if the space program is gone, where do you go? Right? Some of them will get picked up in other industries, but the vast majority don't have skills of equivalency. So we're going to lose that. And one of the things that made us great technology-wise is we used to do the opposite, right? We would take the best Indian engineers and bring them here, put them to work, or German engineers and put them to work, or Russian engineers and put them to work. We just created a reverse flow. And what that means for us in the future is we're going to lose that technological edge in space. We're trying to put that back together in the budget process because I'm very, very concerned about it. We have to count on the Russians now to get us to the space station. Now, when they first negotiated the deal, it was $20 million per ride. Right? Once the shuttle flew its last mission, guess how much the ride is now? $65 million. Why? Because we can't get there ourselves, and they know it. To me, it is and I don't know why we would abandon fundamental American values at a time when the world is catching up and in some cases may surpass us. And by the way, this isn't when the world surpasses us, it's if the world surpasses us. It's up to us to determine the if. There's no reason in the world we can't continue to be the leading innovators, the world's greatest economy, the strongest defended nation in the world. That's up to us. We don't have to give this away. So I'm very, very concerned about it. One thing is we have protected in the budget from my committee the intelligence space portion of our overhead architecture, which I think is incredibly important that we continue to have the latest and the greatest technology so that we can kind of keep that technological edge. If we don't, we're going to be in trouble. Yes, sir. I'm just full of good news today, aren't I? For God's sake. Nobody wants to see me come anymore. I don't know what that is.
It's either good news or bad news. You haven't said anything about this, but what's happening south of the borders?
Well, I wish I had good news for you. Let me take that back. There are some bright spots on there. We have a more robust relationship than we have ever had with the Mexican authorities. The problem is we're having a hard time getting it out of Mexico City. So, we have, in the last, I want to say, I think it's 4 years. My years might be wrong, but the number's correct. It's almost 50,000 murders. And it's pushing right up against our border. It is a huge problem. And they are well-financed very well organized. They are more than just organized crime gangs now. They're the organized crime gangs on steroids because of their level of sophistication. They have now military, paramilitary units, well-armed paramilitary units roaming around some of those states on our southern border that are not our states, their states, that are very, very concerning. So good news is I've been down to Mexico City twice now to have discussions about, hey, listen, this is a mutual problem. We're willing to help you step up your capabilities to try to deal with this. We have good people that can help you deal with this. The problem is they can't quite get over 1845, which is a challenge for us. You would think it happened yesterday. I can't tell you how many lectures I've had. So we're trying to work through that. Colombians are actually being very helpful in this. The Colombians have one of the most effective counter terrorism narcotics teams in the world because we trained them, and they are exceptionally good. I would almost put them as good as some of our teams. So we're trying to engage the Colombians in this. If it doesn't have to be us, well, that's fine with us, but it has to be somebody. Their capabilities have to go up. We're still a ways off from trying to get that equation right. But the good news is the government of Mexico understands what a problem. I mean, they're executing their police officers. They have towns now where they have no police departments because they have killed the chief and the police officers. There was one case where the police officer had gotten there literally within 24 hours. They went to his house and shot him. Pretty good way not to get anyone to apply to be the police chief anymore. And so that happens more and more and more. So that's the problem we've got to stem the tide. We're engaged. We're not where we want to be yet. Yes, sir.
I have to admit, I'm already worried just for the last 7 minutes.
We should have done this over drinks, shouldn't we have? No, we'd all been happier, I think.
How do you get all these things done without getting the public excessively involved?
Without getting the public? Well, I think you should have the public involved. I mean, obviously there's intelligence relationships and those kinds of things that have been here since Jefferson that need to continue, and that's all good. I mean, those are important relationships to have. But I do believe that when we just don't have these discussions, and I get it. I mean, the economy's hard, it's bad. When people are worried about their jobs, they're not necessarily worried about anything else. But our long-term economic health depends on our engagement in the world. I'll tell you, one of my concerns is this notion that we can just kind of hunker down and build up fences and everything is going to be fine. That world is gone, if it were ever here. That world's gone, and we need to be engaged. And I argue we need to start making the case about why we need to be engaged. And there is no better force for good in the world than the United States of America. We've never taken land and treasure. We don't do that. And so we need to be engaged. We're the only honest brokers. I'll tell you this, but a public dialogue has to happen. Right? Did you ever hear any of this? Really? We don't, because it's hard. I guess apparently it's hard to talk about. But I was in Lebanon, and they've got a huge problem. Hezbollah in the south, which is, by the way, financed by Iran. Their weapon systems are getting exceptionally good. And Lebanon is an interesting place because they're the one place that built into law, their constitution, guaranteed slots for Christians and Shias and Sunnis. It's really kind of an interesting, and it's done pretty well for itself under that context. So they like to argue that they're the most progressive, and it's been that way. They've had, to some degree, less violence and trouble than other countries. At the end of it, I had one of the senior military folks there grab me and say, hey, do me a favor. When you go home, tell your countrymen don't give up on themselves. The world needs them. Who else will take care of us? And when he meant take care of us, he meant if all goes to heck in a place like Lebanon. He said the Russians, the Chinese, nobody does it like the United States. I thought that was a pretty powerful thing, right? That's the way the rest of the world sees us. We're seeing ourselves as let's kind of hunker down and it's hard and we're not going to get through this. That's what concerns me. So I hope we all start engaging and getting involved in this debate. and it's 9 o'clock and I have to go and I'm getting the hook. Thank God, because I had three other really bad things to tell you. I'm just kidding. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We have some highly desirable, highly collectible Seidman goods for you. I think you and I are the only ones in the room with ITAR cleared, so we can't tell them what's inside. So we'll keep that a secret, but use them.
Even though the Chinese already have them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
And just a reminder that our next breakfast speaker will be Doug Rothwell. That is on Wednesday, March 21st, 7:30 right here. We look forward to seeing all of you again at that breakfast. Thank you.